They always said I brought shame to the family the day I chose to keep my baby. Not once did they see my son as a blessing, not even when he wrapped his tiny hand around Mom's finger in the hospital or the first time he smiled at Dad from his crib. To them, he was proof of my disobedience. Proof I had defied their plans for my life. Proof that I had loved the wrong man and lost everything. When that man abandoned me 2 weeks after I told him I was pregnant, they shook their heads and whispered, "She chose this." And I did. But I didn't choose to raise my son in a house filled with sneers, cold breakfasts, slammed doors, and a silence so loud it echoed in my bones. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video. I stayed because I had no money, no job, no degree, just a baby carrier, and a family who reminded me every day that I was less than my sister, less than what they hoped for. My sister Kelly, 5 years younger, the golden child, straight A's, spotless record, no boyfriends, no drama. When I changed diapers, she got fitted for prom dresses. When I rocked my son to sleep after midnight fevers, she practiced her valedictorian speech in front of the mirror. Last week, I had saved up enough to finally apply to night school. Mom tossed the brochure into the trash and muttered, "Waste of ink. You can't even manage your child without needing help." Dad just turned the TV volume louder. My son, Eli, was the only light I had, and I would protect him with everything in me. That night, the wind howled against the windows like it knew what was coming. I had just finished warming a bottle when I noticed Eli's cheeks flushed deep pink. His forehead was burning. I panicked. We didn't have a thermometer. No one had ever bothered to buy one. I went to the kitchen where Mom was slicing oranges and Kelly was scrolling on her phone. "Mom," I said, my voice shaking, "Eli's really hot. I think he has a fever. I need to take him to urgent care. Can I borrow the car?" Mom didn't even glance at me. "Then walk," she said. "You've got 2 legs." "It's below freezing," I pleaded. "He's a baby. He needs help." She looked at Dad, who was now standing at the hallway, arms folded. His face was stone. "Better wrap him in those rags you call blankets," he said, voice full of disdain. "Maybe some cold air will toughen him up. Please, just let me take the car. I'll be back in an hour." Dad leaned against the wall, then said it, flat, cruel, final. "Let him shiver. He's just a reminder of your mistake." Kelly giggled. Mom clapped slowly and sarcastically. "You should have thought of that before you opened your legs." Something broke in me. I clutched Eli tighter and said nothing. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I went upstairs, packed the last of Eli's diapers in a backpack, wrapped him in every layer I owned, and kissed. His tiny fingers. His fever was rising. Outside, the storm had arrived. Snow piled in waves, wind slicing across the streets. My boots leaked, my coat barely zipped. But I walked. Every step forward felt like pushing through cement. The sidewalk had vanished under a thick sheet of white. Streetlights flickered. My breath froze in midair. Eli whimpered in his carrier, burning with fever, his forehead resting against my chest. My hands were numb. My toes disappeared inside my socks. But I walked. Not because I was strong, but because no one else was coming, and if I stopped, my baby would suffer alone. I couldn't let that happen. Not again. When I finally saw the Red Cross glow of the clinic sign flickering in the snow, I fell to my knees, sobbing, clutching my son like my life depended on it. It did. So did his. The nurse at the urgent care gasped when she saw me collapse through the entrance, snow clinging to my coat like frostbitten shame. I couldn't even speak. My lips were cracked from the cold. I just held out Eli, my hands trembling, and whispered, "Fever. Please, help him." She took him from me so fast I thought my heart might rip in two. 2 more nurses rushed over with a heated blanket and a thermometer. One placed a soft hand on my back and said, "You're safe now. We've got him." Safe. I hadn't heard that word in years. They took Eli into the pediatric room and I was told to wait. But I couldn't sit still. Every time I blinked, I heard my father's voice echo in my skull. "Let him shiver. My baby. My son. He could have died out there. And my parents, my own blood, had laughed while they condemned him to freeze, just because he was mine. The doctor came out 30 minutes later. He had a 103.5 fever, early signs of hypothermia, if you hadn't brought him in when you did. He didn't finish the sentence. I didn't ask him to. They admitted Eli for the night. I slept on the bench in the hallway, wrapped in one of the wool blankets they offered. I stared at the ceiling the entire night, silent tears pooling in my ears. In the morning, I called my parents from the clinic phone. I wanted to yell, scream, demand to know why, but all I said was, "He's better. He made it." Mom's voice came through flat. "That's good. You done making us the villains now?" "I didn't make you anything," I said quietly. "You chose this. You left your grandson to die." Click. They hung up. That was the moment I knew I would never go back. Not for money, not for shelter, not for closure. They weren't family, just people I shared a roof with. I was assigned a caseworker through the clinic's family outreach program. When I told her about everything, the neglect, the verbal abuse, the night I walked through a blizzard with a feverish infant, she looked horrified. She placed her hand on mine and said, "No one should go through what you did, and you're not alone anymore." She found us a spot at a temporary women's shelter that offered single mothers legal aid and childcare. The beds were small, the food basic, but the warmth, the human kindness, was everything. Eli smiled more there than he ever had at my parents' house. Within 2 weeks, the shelter's counselor helped me apply for a government assistance grant. I started working nights at a diner, and during the day I took classes online, baby Eli on my lap. It was slow, hard, lonely. But I was rebuilding. One late evening, after putting Eli to sleep on the shelter bunk, I scrolled through a message from my old friend Megan. I hadn't spoken to her in years, but she had heard what happened from someone mutual. "I'm so sorry," she wrote. "They always treated you like garbage. I'm a paralegal now. If you ever want to talk, I'd love to help." That message changed everything. I met with her 2 days later in a coffee shop. I told her about how my parents used to log all the child support checks I received, and how somehow the money always disappeared. She raised her eyebrows. "Did you give them direct access?" "They said I wasn't responsible enough," I admitted. "I thought they were helping." Megan leaned forward. "If they were siphoning your child's money, that's financial abuse. You may have legal grounds." Legal grounds. It sounded like music. Megan helped me get in touch with a nonprofit law firm that took interest in my case. The more I shared, the worse it looked for my parents, not only for endangering a minor, but for potentially stealing funds allocated for Eli's care. They thought I'd be too broken to fight back. But I was rising, and I was documenting everything. One night, Kelly messaged me out of nowhere. "Mom says come home. They're willing to talk now, especially Dad. He wants to see Eli." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I replied, "Funny, he wanted to see Eli burn just 2 months ago." She replied instantly, "That's not fair. You made things hard for them too. You need to move on." Move on? They tried to freeze my baby to death in a storm because he wasn't worth wool. They would see what moving on meant. It had been 3 months since that night in the blizzard. 3 months since I walked through ice with my baby burning up in my arms. 3 months since my father tossed me a trash bag and said, "Let him burn. Maybe he'll learn not to be born to you." Now I stood at the entrance of a sleek community center. Eli, finally healthy, was asleep in his stroller. In my hand was an envelope. Inside, proof, bank statements, transaction logs, screenshots of my parents' withdrawal history, evidence they had been taking every cent of my child's support funds for themselves. It was time. With the help of the nonprofit legal team Megan connected me to, we had filed a formal report. The state was now investigating not only financial abuse, but child endangerment. But I wasn't done. See, in the months since I'd moved into the shelter, I had shared my story online through a blog supported by the Women's Center. It wasn't about vengeance. At first, I wrote under a pseudonym, just needing to breathe through the pain. I talked about what it felt like to be dehumanized by your own family. To be left to freeze with your baby, to watch your parents wrap your sister in love while throwing you to the wolves, it went viral. Tens of thousands of women began responding, sharing their stories, crying with me, calling out their own abusers. They dubbed my father the trash bag dad, my mother the silent knife. And then I got a message from a local podcast host who wanted me to appear anonymously. I agreed. The episode was titled, "Let Him Burn, the Girl They Left in the Storm." It trended on every platform within 48 hours. And soon, my parents' neighbors were whispering. Their church friends looked at them differently. Their co-workers asked questions. My sister was bombarded with comments online. Is this about your family? Did your parents really let her walk through a blizzard? Where did all the child support money go? They tried to claim it was fiction, made up. But then came the subpoena. See, I had filed for full custody protection for Eli, legally removing any rights my parents might have had as emergency guardians. That required court proceedings. And those proceedings were public record. They were served on a Wednesday. I found out because my mom left a screaming voicemail. You humiliated us. Your father lost his job. Your sister's college friends won't stop asking questions. Is this what you wanted? I listened to it while stirring soup for Eli, and then I saved the voicemail. The day of the court hearing, they actually showed up, all clean and cold, dressed like the respectable parents they pretended to be. My dad wouldn't look me in the eye. My mom kept wringing her scarf like it was my throat. But when my lawyer played the clinic surveillance footage, me walking in, snow-covered, barely standing, handing over a burning baby, the courtroom went still. And when she played the voicemail, gasps filled the room. The judge stared at them for a long time. You endangered a child, he said quietly. You stole from him, and from her. And you justified it with cruelty I can barely fathom. Then he turned to me. You're not just a mother. You're a survivor. I won. I got full protective custody. A small restitution amount was ordered for the stolen funds. My parents were barred from contacting me or Eli again. It wasn't about the money. It was about the truth. Outside the courtroom, my sister tried to run up to me. Wait, she yelled. We didn't mean for it to go that far. I turned, and for the first time in my life, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just looked at her and said, Tell Dad, next time he wants to throw someone away, he should remember. Trash doesn't walk through a blizzard and rise. Then I walked away. Today, I work full-time for that women's outreach center. I share stories. I help mothers find shelter. I hold their hands when no one else will. I even run a small blog and podcast. Eli is happy, safe, thriving. And every winter when the snow falls, I wrap him in the softest, warmest coat I can find. Not just to keep him warm, but to remind him. He was never trash. He is everything. And I was always enough. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video.